It takes many people to operate the armed forces of the United States of America. And there's a phrase that they often use. It is tooth to tail. Maybe some of you who served in the armed forces understand what that means, but for those of you who don't, the tooth is the combat, the part that bites. They're the people on the front lines who are engaging the enemy. The tail, then, is the support team, the headquarters, the administration, the logistical, basically the life support of the armed forces. And many of these soldiers won't see combat, but they're still a part of the whole apparatus of the armed forces. In Desert Storm, 40% of all soldiers engaged in it, only 40% were combat, 36% were logistics, 24% were headquarters and administration. Since then, they've decided to add civilian contractors. So it's not just soldiers, it's sometimes ex-soldiers or sometimes people that are hired by paramilitary organizations. So it's really more like 25% combat, 43% logistics, 18% headquarters, and 18% life support. My dad, for instance, served during the Vietnam War, but he wasn't in Vietnam. He was actually in Germany, and he was a Morse code operator, not really working in Vietnam, but more working against communism, trying to decode different Soviet messages that were coming across. And he didn't even really know, again, what they were. He was just trying to take it all down as a Morse code operator, and then he would send it on up. Later, in fact, just a couple of years ago, found out that some of those messages that his group found, saved lives in what they were able to decode. So it takes a vast network of people in the armed forces, and just because someone is a veteran doesn't mean that they served in combat, but just because they didn't serve in combat doesn't mean they weren't important and even vital to the operation of the armed forces and eventually even our safety and freedom. In the same way, we are in a battle against dangerous enemies. And the Bible mentions three of them: the world, Satan, and our flesh. And if it's a war, and it is, then there are also some casualties as well. And we see all around us lives that are destroyed in this war by sin. In the world, we see children just succumbing to dangerous ideologies, the effects on our culture and on lives of fornication, and the acceptance of violence in our society. We're seeing the fruit of it, and if you don't see the effects of sin, then probably you're not out there talking to people very much. If you have a nice little bubble where you only talk to nice Christian people, then you maybe don't see the effects of sin in the world, but it's pervasive, even and especially in Park Rapids. In the church, we have an assault from the world, the flesh, and the devil on false doctrine, on offenses, on unforgiveness, on gossip and division. Who can help the church fight this war? Who can fight? And the answer that the Bible tells over and over again is that the church is to fight this battle, that we can, that when there is a call to those who will fight against the world, the flesh, and the devil, it is not just our missionaries, it's not just our pastors, but the call comes to every single believer. 2 Timothy 2 verse 3 says, "Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ." In Ephesians 6 verses 10 and 11, it tells us, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil." And he goes on to talk about the armor using this soldier language for just the everyday Christian, saying you are in a battle and so you need to fight. And you can say, well, I'm not a pastor. And even thus, there is a role for you. So 1 Thessalonians is written to a struggling but a thriving church. In chapter 2, verse 14, they were being persecuted. In chapter 3, verse 4, he warns them that persecution is coming. And now he's getting to the end of the epistle, and there are some practical implications of the fight that the Thessalonians are going to be up against. They haven't felt it all yet, but he wants to tell them, as you are in this fight, here are some things that you need to know. And he starts in verse 14 by exhorting them. The word exhorting means to admonish them. He wants to try to get them to do the right thing, to exhort them, to do well in the battle. And the reason for that is that the church needs the church. There is a battle. On my radio broadcast this morning, I preached out of 1 Peter 5:8, which is, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. If there is an enemy, and he's not a passive enemy, sometimes we think of Satan over there, and if we encroach on his territory, he'll come after us, but the Bible describes him as a lion walking about, seeking whom he may devour. And if that is true, and if he tells us that we can be sober and vigilant and that we can resist the devil and he will flee from us, then it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we are in the fight to battle against the forces of Satan and to take our jobs and our roles as soldiers seriously. It's not just for pastors, but it's for all of us. And so I want you to notice just the 4 admonitions here in chapter 5, verse 14. Again, we're only going to look at one verse. It says this, now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak, be patient toward all men. One verse, Pastor, are you really going to preach a whole message on one verse? Well, I mean, look, there's 4 different admonitions here in just one verse. And the first one is this, warn them that are unruly. The word warn here means put them to mind. Means remind them, bring it to the forefront of their mind that there is danger. Remind them that there's an importance here. We all hear and learn, and honestly, in a day and age where we are just bombarded with information, we have really learned to kind of filter things. Have you ever caught yourself reading an article and you're just skimming? You're just kind of looking for the important parts, and then you go to read your Bible and you're kind of doing the same thing? I don't know about you, but I have to really discipline myself and say, okay, I haven't been reading the Bible. I've been skimming the Bible, and I need to read it. So I'll go back and read that passage again and look into it and see what I can find from the Bible. We all hear so much information, and it's so easy to forget most of what we hear. And this is why Paul is saying, remind them, bring them to mind of what is going on. Now, the word warn implies a negative consequence. If you don't, there is danger ahead. Right? Nobody warns you that it might be a nice day tomorrow. That's the wrong word to use. That would be great if that was the case. They warn you that it might be a stormy day. Something negative might happen. Now, who are they to warn in this passage? It says, warn them that are unruly. The word unruly, and I looked it up, we think of, what does unruly mean? Probably your first thought is children, right? If I just say, what kind of people does the word unruly apply to? Your number one thought is children, right? And the next one might be men. I don't know. But the idea here is warn the unruly. So what the word unruly in the Greek means literally just people that are not arranged. It was actually a military term for soldiers who had gotten out of step. Now, again, I didn't serve in the military, but I understand there's a cohesion that they need where everybody's moving together. And that's why when you see military personnel marching, they're all marching to the same cadence, and they work really hard to get everybody in step. And this idea of unruly is someone who isn't going with everybody else, who's someone who wants to march to the beat of a different drum. And that works great when you're an artist and not so great when you're a soldier. And so he's saying, warn them. Now, some commentators wonder if maybe some of these unruly people are the people we're going to learn about in 2 Thessalonians, where they had stopped working altogether. Oh, the rapture's coming, so I don't have to do anything. And he's telling them, hey, get back in line. Get back with the program of the church. Don't step out because the rapture is coming and because you're going to be taken to be home with the Lord, and so forget all of you. Don't do that. He says, warn those that are stepped out. Now, again, whether that's who he's talking to or not, the church needs help. Needs to help people get back in line. Now, pastors, I think, do the heavy lifting on the warning. That's true, but I think everybody needs to be involved in this. Albert Barnes, the commentator, said this, quote, one reason why there is so little piety in the church and why so many professors of religion go astray is that the great mass of church members feel no responsibility on this subject. They suppose that it is the duty only of the officers of the church to admonish an erring brother, and hence many become careless and cold and worldly, and no one utters a kind word to them to recall them to a holy walk with God." Unquote. It is the job of the pastor, and I'll take that job seriously. I will also say that my job, by virtue of my job, is not always well heeded. For instance, if there are people who are not coming to church anymore, or not tithing, or not serving, doesn't it seem a little self-serving for the pastor to say, "You should really be putting something in the plate," or "You should really be attending more services," or "You should really be serving"? Now, I don't mean it that way, but it can't help but come off that way. That's just one instance in some cases where it would be great if someone else were to say, "Hey, you really ought to get in line to warn the unruly. This is not the way that we do things here. We need you to get with the program of the church." Now, in the armed forces, there are units who are needed to keep soldiers in line. It's called the military police. I had a friend in college, Eric Hibbs, and he, in the middle of his college career, decided he was going to join the military and went down to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri to become a military police officer. And so his brothers and I drove down there. First time I'd ever driven down there, and thankfully my car held up, but we drove down there to go see his graduation ceremony. And it was a great thing to watch all these soldiers graduating and getting ready to go serve. My friend ended up not doing military police. He ended up flying helicopters, which was an amazing thing, and just recently retired. But this military police, they are trained to arrest soldiers who break protocol, who try to desert, who try to do things that they as soldiers should not do. And then they have to, some of those military police, they join the military to go be a soldier, and then they end up actually guarding some of their fellow soldiers in the jails for soldiers and detainees. They are vital, though, to keeping order. Without the military police, you don't have a good army, because otherwise everyone kind of just does what they want. If you don't have anybody who can say, "Listen, if you don't do the right thing, the military police will come and get you," then everybody can do whatever they want. A soldier, a sergeant, a lieutenant can say, "This is the way you ought to do things." And the soldiers can think to themselves, "Yeah, or what?" The military police is the answer to the "or what." This is what's going to happen. And in the armed forces, there are 2,200 people needed to act as judges and lawyers and advocates, over and above even just the military police. They uphold law, but they are meant to keep troops in order. So you say, okay, all right, we are to warn them that are unruly, to admonish those, to remind those who are stepping out of line. What does that look like, though, for us? Matthew Henry said this, quote, "There will be in all societies some who walk disorderly, who go out of their rank and station, and it is not only the duty of ministers, but of private Christians also, to warn and admonish them. Such should be reproved for their sin, warned of their danger, and told plainly of the injury they do to their own souls and the hurt they may do to others. Such should be put in mind of what they should do and be reproved for doing otherwise." It is, again, building a culture where this can happen first. And I understand in America, it's a very whoa, I don't know if it's really my place to go and tell someone they're not doing the right thing. We are so fiercely independent, it's almost like a sin. It's almost like a sin to even mention to somebody else what they should be doing, because it's so impolite to do that we almost put it in that category of who do you think you are? Man, they are prideful. Man, they are prying in my business, and they have no business doing that. And yet the Bible tells us to warn the unruly. So I want to build a culture, not just, again, hear me, not where we're criticizing each other. I don't want to say we need to build a culture where we're going to call each other out. No, I want to build a culture where I'm telling you, hey, if you see anything, I really need you to let me know. If I'm stepping out of line, I need you to tell me that, because I'm not always going to see it, because I want that. And when we will mutually submit to one another and say, hey, whatever, if you care about me, then if you see something, I need to hear that. That's the kind of culture I'm talking about, not just a critical culture. And again, encouragement on one hand. I want to talk about encouragement. I really do. I'm just talking about warning the unruly. So when we're unruly, we need to be warned. And so building a culture where that can happen. Let me just give you a few points of what that might look like. First of all, rebuking when there is sin. James 5, verse 20, he which converteth the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death and shall hide a multitude of sins. Do you care about your church members? Do you care about the people that are coming enough to try to convert them from the error of their ways and save a soul from death? I hope you do. 1 Timothy 4, verse 16, take heed unto thyself and unto the doctrine and continue in them. For in doing this thou shalt both save thyself and them that hear thee. Paul tells Timothy, keep preaching, keep warning the unruly, because not only are you going to save yourself, but those that hear you as well. Number 2, it's reminding people of the consequences of sin, that it is dangerous. That means admitting our faults to another. And again, not just, I kind of joked about, who wants to confess a grievous sin? But isn't that a good thing to do? Haven't you ever been encouraged when you think you're just the worst person in the world and someone comes along and says, and I was struggling with that very same thing not that long ago. And here's how the Lord gave me victory. We're calling it serious. We're saying it's a serious thing. Some of you ladies were at a women's conference where you heard a dear lady talk about some of the wild things that she had done and what God had saved her from. And isn't it a good thing to hear those things? Not just to say, wow, what a grace that God can save you from, but also to say, wow, that is the consequences of sin. When we hear the wages of sin is death, we often forget what that really looks like. So it's a good thing for us to be reminded and to remind others, hey, that path is no good. You are not going to be happy going on that path. Younger people need to hear what might happen if they continue on that. It's important for us to cultivate relationships with younger people in the church, younger in the faith, people that really need your help, to come alongside you and to say, I want to have the opportunity to build such a relationship where I can warn you about stepping out of line and what that looks like. Again, I'm not saying to step out of line of like what Pastor Hawn expects, but to be in their life so much that you see something that's happening in their life and you see the slide starting and you can say, I'm warning you about stepping out of line. I don't want you to go there. Married couples need to be warned about the pitfalls of marriage. Those of you who have gone through all those troubles, you need to kind of adopt some of these couples that are maybe just starting off or maybe have been through it and oh yeah, right around this time is when you have struggle and this is the time that we had our bumps and having them and being honest about them and warning them, hey, I'm seeing stuff in your marriage, I'm seeing stuff in your life, I'm seeing stuff in the way you treat your wife, the way you treat your husband, that is not good. You're outside of the bounds. I'm warning the unruly. That's a good thing. I can do that. I can do some of that from the pulpit. I can do some of that in counseling. But honestly, Amy and I have only been married 23 years. It'll be in December. Some of you have a lot more experience than I do, and you've seen things that would really be more helpful than what I can even say. I'm not shirking my responsibility. I'm just saying there's a perspective that's good for you as well. And then third, encouraging them when they start to stray. Apathy is a really dangerous thing. Some people are not honestly trying to walk away. They're just kind of sliding. It's just kind of they don't even know where they're going. You ever been in a boat and you're just kind of doing your thing and you look up and you're like, wow, we've really drifted far away. It didn't even feel like that. Man, that happens a lot easier than we like to think. Hebrews 2 verse 1 says, therefore we ought to give the more earnest heed to those things which we have heard, lest at any time we should let them slip. It's important to remind Christians of their conduct and holiness. Now, I've spent a lot of time just on that first one. I don't think the other ones will take that long. So the next one is this. It says, we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded. Now, when I say feeble-minded, you're thinking, I don't think that's a really PC way of talking about those kinds of people. And that's the way we think of maybe people that have some, what's the word? Mental disabilities or something like that. That's kind of what we think of, the feeble-minded. But we ought to love those who are developmentally challenged, yes. But this word actually means, it's two words that actually means small-souled or weak-breathed, or people that are overwhelmed and their spirit is just, I can't do this anymore. They are too burdened. That's really what the word means, more than when we see feeble-minded, we think, oh, someone who's not very smart. No, it's actually more like someone who has been through so much that they don't feel like they can go on any further. They're all out of breath but it's not them, it's their spirit. They're just worn down. Those are the people that we are supposed to meet. Now, what does that mean? Again, John Gill says in his commentary, such as are not able to bear the loss of near and dear relations, are ready to stagger under the cross and at the reproaches and persecutions of the world, and are almost overset with the temptations of Satan, and are borne down and discouraged with the corruptions of their hearts. Do you know anybody in the church that's really can you see them when they come into church? Some people come into church and they're like, hey, it's church time. And some people you see just kind of sloughing in. And they go right to their pew and they sit down. And I watch them sing, and they're not singing, they're just kind of looking. And they're really carrying some heavy things. And that's why I said, hey, whether you come to church this morning and you had a great week in the Lord, and man, I'm excited, let's take on the devil. Yeah, I had a great time in my Bible. Yeah. Or the people that are coming in and saying, whew, I really need something. I need some kind of help. That's the people we're talking about. Hybert, in his commentary, which is one of my favorite when I'm studying through 1 Thessalonians, said this, quote, the feeble-minded are members who have become discouraged for some reason, perhaps because of adverse circumstances or because of their deep consciousness of their own sinfulness, causing them to despair of being able to live the Christian life, unquote. And again, Matthew Henry, by these are intended the timorous and faint-hearted, or such as are dejected and of a sorrowful spirit. Some are cowardly, afraid of difficulties, and disheartened at the thoughts of hazards and losses and afflictions. So this is the kind of people we're talking about, people that are they feel like life is crushing them, and they need what? Comfort. They need comfort. Now, the word comfort is the word you probably heard, parakaleo. That's when it talks about the comforter in John chapter 14, it's the word paraclete, not parakeet, but paraclete. And the idea of being the para, meaning with, kaleo, call, it means someone you call over to sit with you. That's literally what it means. Someone who can be a comfort by coming over and just sitting next to you. There's someone who's near. You probably have some friends that live far away, and it's a wonderful thing to talk to them on the phone. But isn't it true that when you're really, really, let's use the Bible word, feeble-minded, when you really feel like you just don't have a lot left, it's really great to have someone sitting next to you. It's really nice to have someone sitting in the same room as you. You can have people call you and say, oh, I'm so sorry about what happened. But that's nothing like having someone actually in the same room, and they're just there. That's a wonderful thing. That's what we're called to do. We're called to come alongside and speak to them in helpful ways, not from far away, but close quarters. Now, again, when we think about the military, in this battle that we're in, some people are called to pull the trigger, and some people are called to nurse up the wounds when other people have had the trigger pulled against them, the nurses. In the Revolutionary War, I found this out, nurses were paid $2 a month for helping to nurse soldiers. $2 a month. Clara Barton served as a nurse in the Civil War, and it was from her efforts that we have the American Red Cross. 22,000 nurses signed up for World War I, and at first they had them at the rear guard so that men would come off the front lines and be helped and then go back. But then they realized how important it was to have them near the front lines to help meet the needs there, and so they started putting nurses right near the battle lines. In the Vietnam War, the medevac and how much was going meant that people had more autonomy. There were too many soldiers coming at once, and one person talking about this said this, quote, combat nurses work 12-hour shifts 6 days a week, and when a mass casualty incident occurred, like a major battle, those 12-hour shifts could easily turn into 24 to 36-hour shifts. Nurses also volunteered their time in the communities around them, often going to the local orphanages or hospitals to offer the civilians their medical services or to teach classes on basic hygiene, first aid, or even English. This is important. And important, the nurses that served in World War I and II, and the Vietnam War and the Korean War, those are important soldiers, important people that we needed. And today, even many are serving in the armed forces as well as VA hospitals. All of that is so, so important. You say, okay, well, what does it look like then to comfort the feeble-minded? I can think of three things. One is encouraging faith. When someone is just downtrodden, you can encourage their faith. I think often when people feel really like they don't have much left, there's a lot of fear that's involved there, fear about the future. When you've got a lot going for you, you're not really afraid about the future. Oh, sure, things could happen, but it's unlikely to happen. But when you feel like everything is gone, remember when we studied Job? There was so much that Job was saying, the day that I feared has come, and he was just afraid of what might happen next. And that's where a lot of people are. And fear, a lot of that fear comes from an unbelief. That belief that they had that God would take care of them has been shaken and needs someone to come and restore it for them. We need to remind them of God's promises and encourage their faith in God and submitting to whatever he has, knowing that he has good things even in those hard times. Second, it means restoring a person after they sin. It's true that when a person sins, they feel small and feeble. And when they're overtaken with a sin, we are called to restore them and to help them. We can't just leave them. 1 Corinthians 5 tells the church to rebuke this man that was caught in adultery. But then in 2 Corinthians verses 7 and 8, it says, so that contrariwise you ought rather to forgive him. He's repented. Forgive him and comfort him, lest perhaps such an one should be swallowed up with overmuch sorrow. We want there to be sorrow and repentance, but when that repentance has come, let's comfort them and not let them be overwhelmed with sorrow. Wherefore I beseech you that you would confirm your love toward him. Galatians 6, verses 1 and 2. And again, I don't know that churches are always very good at this. I think we see the sin around us so much, and we see so much sin creeping into the church that we're too afraid to let someone back in after they've sinned. We're too afraid to make it seem like we're not taking sin seriously. But the Bible does say in Galatians chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, if a man be overtaken with a fault, ye who are spiritual, restore such an one in the spirit of meekness. Why? Considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Sin in the church, sin in our friendships is going to happen. We call them to repent, and when they do, when they are then made feeble because of their sins, we comfort them and bring them back up. And then finally, find someone who needs lifting up and encouraging. It's a wonderful ministry to find someone who's struggling. And even, so let's just picture next Sunday morning, and here comes someone sloughing in, and you know they're having a struggle. And instead of going to say hi to your friends, which is a wonderful thing, and instead of maybe even singing those songs, you would just sit with them, stand with them. You would go with someone who's all alone. And you might even say, hey, I know the service has started. Do you want to just go somewhere and pray together real quick before the service? Do you want to just kind of go and have a little word? I don't think, you should spend the whole service talking. There's times for that, but I think there's also a time just to be able to say, hey, this is really important, and you're not going to get anything out of the message if you don't have a little bit of comfort first, a little bit of coming alongside first. That's so important. And we could all have a ministry in that part. Again, that's not something I'm going to be able to do. They need me to song lead and preach, and I have time throughout the week where I can do that, but I'm just saying, as far as a ministry goes, what an encouragement. The third admonition here is to support the weak. Support the weak. The weak is just a very general term. It's those without strength. There are some without any spiritual muscles. They've never built them up. They've never had good teaching and preaching, or they're getting it now, but they don't really know what to do. They don't really know how they're supposed to do things. And now possibly it's talking about physical needs. They need someone to meet their needs, but there is someone who is weak in some way, and you can make that as broad as you want. Someone who is weak. What are we to do? We are to support them. Literally, the word means to hold yourself opposite to. So have you ever had something where someone just loses their legs? They just kind of there was someone in our home several years ago that got a phone call from her sister and took the call and found out on the phone that her brother died. And she just started to fall right away, and I was there to catch her. She started crying, and we just kind of lowered her to the ground, and just wanted to support her. But that's what kind of the idea is talking about. When someone just doesn't have any strength, you got to do all the lifting for them. You grab them and you hold yourself against them and try to support them in some way. That's what he's talking about here. You let others lean on you. Now, if you've ever had someone lean on you, you can only do it it seems like for a little while. It's a very hard thing to do, to have someone really lean on you. Have you ever had someone who's been hurt and says, I just need you to get me to XYZ? It's a lot of work, but it's worth the work. It's worth it for us to help support other people who are weak and can't do it for themselves. You would want the same thing for yourself, and we are called to support those who just can't do it anymore for themselves, to hold them up. In the armed forces, again, there are many who stay back and bear up soldiers. There are mechanics who, in the jeeps and the helicopters and the planes, are up and going, and as they're back, they're getting all the things they need. There are some who make sure that the supply chains are upheld, that the food and the medicine and everything is on the front lines, and that everything happening back there is going so that the supplies are there. If you've ever read anything about war, most wars are lost not because the soldiers aren't fighting or aren't courageous. It's because they don't have the ammunition, they don't have the food, they don't have the medicine that they need, and they're losing people. That's what eventually happened with the Civil War. There was a blockade, that Operation Anaconda, and that's what ended the war. It wasn't brave Union soldiers, because the Confederates had a lot of fighting them. They just didn't have clothes, food, or ammunition. So you need all those kinds of people who are not doing the fighting themselves. They're supporting. That's, again, why I love missions and why we can't do everything. We're doing what we can here in Park Rapids, and it would be an amazing thing to think about someone who's over in one of these countries having a relative who's in Park Rapids. We're trying to reach them as we're praying for them to be, we're supporting missionaries to reach them as well. I don't know all of that. I think heaven will have all that out, but we're in a support capacity in some cases, and we're on the front lines in others. Now, what does that look like? I think, first of all, it just means sometimes meeting the physical needs of people. And in my notes here, I have two passages that I referenced this morning. 1 John 3:17, whoso hath the world's good and seeth his brother have need and shutteth up his bowels of compassion from him, how dwelleth the love of God in him? It's a rhetorical question. And the answer is, I don't see it. You shut up your bowels of compassion for someone who has a need? I don't see the love of God there. James 2, verses 15 and 16, if a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto him, depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding you give them not those things which are needful to the body, what doth it profit? The answer, nothing. So it's meeting the physical needs, but it's also meeting the spiritual needs, to support others in prayer, to establishing their faith, encouraging them, comforting them, discipling them, helping people grow in their faith. It's also going beyond yourself to meet the needs of another. In Romans chapter 15, verses 1 and 2, we're told, we then that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak and not to please ourselves. Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification. I'll say, I love being a pastor, but the ministry is hard. Sometimes it's really hard to help other people bear up their burdens. It's always worth it when it works and when they finally stand on their own. Just like any nurse or doctor wants to help people and see them walk out of the hospital all on their own. It's wonderful when it does. It's really hard when it doesn't. But it's worth it. And as I'm your pastor, you would want me to help support you when you're weak. We can do the same thing for one another. Right now, I'm good. I need you to pray for me, but I don't need physical holding up. I'm leading the charge, and I'm happy to do it. But there are people in the church that, I'll be real honest, I can't reach. We just don't connect. They have such a guard up. I was talking with Zach about this yesterday morning, just people that see me coming a mile away, and they just put up a wall. They're not going to talk to me. I can't support them. I can't, but you can. And if you asked me to, I'd go over and talk to your neighbor, your friend, whoever. I would totally do that. But God's called you into their life to help support them. It was years ago, and I'm just trying to take every opportunity I can. When I tell you these stories, I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying, this doesn't happen very often. But years ago, I was walking into Walmart, and one of the technicians that works in the eye care came out, and she was just bawling her head off. And it would have been so easy and honestly less awkward if I would have just walked in and been like, whew, I don't know what's going on there. But I had to stop. I felt like the Lord's like, like, okay. And I just said, hey, are you okay? And she's like, it's just been a really hard day. And can I just pray with you? So I just had a word of prayer with her. And then I went back in because she wanted to be by herself. But at least I prayed with her. And I see her from time to time. She hasn't said a thing to me. She hasn't come to church. I don't know what that whole thing was. But I was just called to help support someone who was having a bad day and very weak. And, it doesn't take pastoral training to do something like that. To just see a need and be like, I'll help. I'll support you. You can call me when you see something like that. Pastor, there's a lady crying over here at Walmart. And I don't know if you can get over here. Or you can help support the weak when you see them. I'm on my last one. It's be patient toward all men. I'll read the whole verse again, just for context, just for those of you tuning in this room. Now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak, be patient toward all men. The word patient literally means be long-passioned or bear up long under the strain, to bear along with people, to put up with a lot, to wait for them. Now to whom? Well, there's only one kind of person that the Bible mentions here. So he's talked about the feeble-minded and the weak and the unruly. And now there's only one other kind of person that you have to be patient with, and that's all men. Now, I'll just remind you that the word men is in italics, which just means that's a supplied word that means everybody, all people. So not just the men. Men, we need help. And ladies, we need you to be patient with us. But this is talking about everybody with everybody. Bear along with everyone. And again, in the armed forces, there's a lot of teamwork. They have to learn to deal with a lot of differences. They spend a lot of time in boot camp trying to shave off all the individuality and all the individual expressions. They're like, we don't care about any of that. We're going to give you the same haircut, same uniform, same everything. You're going to march in the same. And the only thing that might be different is your eyebrows. And if we could shave those off, we would. They're just going to get everybody as similar as possible. They want all of that thing gone. Why? Because they want to encourage teamwork. They don't want you to think on your own. They want you to think in the team. And you're like, I'm not going to be one of those groupthink people. You absolutely need those kind of situations where it is a groupthink kind of thing going on. We're all in one battalion. We're all in the same kind of formation. We're all doing the right thing. And I love when I hear, for instance, someone in the church who's struggling, and by the time I call them, 5 other people from the church have already called them. That's great. Is that groupthink? I don't know what you call it, but I think it's great. I think that's wonderful. That's exactly what we're going for. So we're trying to be patient to all men. We're encouraging the slowest to keep up and to persevere. Do you know that the armed forces employs 8,000 psychologists and 3,000 chaplains? There's a lot of people that are involved in helping people's spiritual, mental, and emotional well-being in the armed forces. You know that those differences that we talk about between people don't matter on the battlefield. We're ready to be one. Now you say, okay, what does it look like to be patient toward all men? One is loving others, even those who are not like you. Now, is the church meant to be exclusive or inclusive? Well, read the Constitution, and there are some exclusive things about our church. If you want certain things, you want to endorse certain sins, then no. That's not going to be a part of what we do. You want certain things that just isn't like us. That's just not going to work. So we are exclusive, but by and large, we're trying to really be inclusive. That as I look out on a Sunday morning, I find a lot of different kinds of people. And I was talking to somebody this week that said, I just don't really feel like I fit in. And I said, well, that's interesting because I feel like a lot of people don't feel like they fit in. But we're just kind of a hodgepodge of a lot of different kinds of people. But the things that we have in similarity are really important. And I feel like if there's anything I can do to make people feel like they fit in, I will. Sometimes it's just a matter of we need to, as a group, define kind of what we're doing here and who we are, that culture, and then just let's go, right? Let's be patient and loving others, even those who aren't like you. And I understand that when you come to church, there are certain people that you are excited to see, and certain people That if I asked you how many weeks has it been since this person is in church, you don't know. That's okay, right? I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that's okay. I'm also just reminding you that there are people that aren't like you, that are part of this body, and they need help as well. He said, I don't know them. And you're like, yeah, I get that. But you can change that. You can go and learn how to love them. You can bear along with them. We're to love our neighbors for Christ's sake. We're to be the best neighbor, the best person that we know. We're the best customer. If you're at any place over and over again, people that are people that are glad to see you. I wanted, when we were building our house, I wanted all those contractors to look at Christians differently because of my testimony. I wanted them to think of a pastor as something, because I'm sure a lot of them had bad experiences with pastors, always wanting something that they shouldn't have. And I just tried to be as kind and as generous as I could because I wanted them to see something a little different, right? So that's part of it, loving others, even those who aren't like you. And then number 2 is to be patient with growing Christians. Growing Christians don't have it figured out. And I don't know about you, but I'm one of those. I don't have it figured out yet. I have to call other pastors and say, what do you think? And sometimes they give answers that are really obvious. And I'm like, I don't know why I didn't think about that. I'm growing. You're growing. Be patient with those people who are really not growing. Colossians 3, verses 12 and 13 says, put on therefore as the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercies, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering, forbearing one another and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. Similarly, in a parallel passage, Ephesians 4, verses 1 through 3, walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you are called, with all lowliness and meekness, with long-suffering, forbearing one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. And just showing Christ's love for us. He loved us when we were not worthy. And there are people that you maybe, again, just don't really connect with and click with. I'm encouraged to see so many people in the church go up to visitors. And I think that's great. I want there to be a culture of friendliness, but again, born out of gospel love for people. And, people in the church here, Dan, you've talked about churches you've been to, and people are not friendly. I heard a podcast recently where they said 6% of churches are considered friendly churches. 6%. And I want to be part of that 6%. If there's a 1%, I want to be there too. I want to be as friendly as we can be. Not because I want more people to be in the church, because I want people to know that this is a place where you're going to find out the love of Christ. You're going to see it displayed. You're going to know what a little taste of what that might be like. One verse of Scripture. There's a lot in there, isn't there? Now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly. Comfort the feeble-minded. Support the weak. Be patient toward all men. God, help us to do all of those things. We understand that we can't do it to perfection, but Lord, we can do it better by your grace and with your help. Lord, please help us to do this, and dismiss us, please, with your blessing in Jesus' name. Amen.